Okay, you guys, so I was hoping to be here, but I just keep coughing, so I need to figure out what's going on with that. So today we're going to be talking about doing proofs where we're trying to prove the lines are parallel. Now, we are always going to be given one set of parallel lines, so your step number 2 in all of these proofs needs to be one of the theorems. So like either based off the corresponding angles theorem, the alternate interior angles theorem, the alternate exterior angles theorem. And then you can use same side interior angles theorem, but I do always recommend using the congruence ones. They are way easier. They are always 4 steps. If you use those theorems and you use them like with the right like set of 2. So step 2 will always be that. Now, you guys have always been asking, or like lately, there was like a lot of confusion on yesterday's practice about when do we pick the theorem versus when do we pick the converse. Well, today's the day where you have to pick between the two. Yesterday, we knew all the lines were parallel, so the only things that we would use were the theorems. Today, since we're going to be doing both, we're going to be given one set of lines are parallel, and we're trying to prove the other sets are parallel, we'll have to use the converse as our step 4. So looking at our step 3 angles, we're going to then use those to say which of the converses that we have. We're going to look for congruent angles that are corresponding. We're going to look for alternate interior angles that are congruent. We're going to look for alternate exterior angles that are congruent. Or looking at same side interior angles that are supplementary. So let's do one that there's really only one way to do it. So we are given at the beginning that line E is parallel to line F. So I always mark these. It's way easier if you know which ones are the parallel ones and which ones are not the parallel ones, especially when we add on more lines or more angles really on the next page, where you'll see like all angles like 1 through 16. That's how they are on the check on Monday. Please, I highly recommend do the extra practice review. That will be really helpful. I'll post the answer key later today just so you guys can check your answers. So, now, you might see that the second thing that we are given is that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And so, I don't usually like to mark those because, other than like trying to point them out, because they aren't an angle pair. I'm never going to give you a pair of angles in the given that are like one of the 4 angle pairs that we just talked about, corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side interior. You can see how angle 1 and angle 3 are not formed by the same 2 lines cut by one transversal. You'll see that angle 1 is formed by line G and line F, and angle 3 is formed by line E and line H. And so because of that, we don't have a good way to use those because there's not a transversal that they share. So what I need to then do is look at the remaining angles. So my goal is to use the fact that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So I need to make a statement 2 that is based off of E is parallel to F that uses either angle 1 or angle 3. And if I look along G, I see that transversal there has both angle 1 and angle 2 off of it, which meets the thing I'm looking for, which is to have... Sorry, I was getting some tea. It's one of the things that we would need. So I can, because I can use G as a transversal, I can talk about angle 2 and angle 1. So, using the fact that E is parallel to F, I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the reason is, well, both angle 1 and angle 2 are on the same side of line G, the transversal of the 2 parallel lines E and F that we're using right now. And so angle 1 and 2 are to the right of line G, or you could think of it as below line G. And then for E and F, angle 2 and angle 1 are both to the right of line E and line F, making them corresponding angles. So by the corresponding angles theorem, Or you could also write if parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. So there's our step 2. This is where we're using that theorem. Now, I see in my given information, you know how we said that we needed to have an angle that's congruent to either angle 1 or angle 3. It's so that we can then go, oh, hey, angle 3 is congruent to angle 1, angle 2 is congruent to angle 1. Therefore, because both angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent to angle 1, we can say that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, or angle 3 is congruent to angle 2 by the transitive property. So, the transitive property is used in these proofs as well. It's just in a different spot than it was in the first set of proofs we did yesterday. And if I look at angle 2 and angle 3, and I mark those using G and H this time, I see that E would be the transversal of angle 2 and angle 3. And so what I'm going to do is look at what angle pair these are, and that's going to be my reason for reason number 4, why line G is parallel to line H. So, because angle 2 and angle 3 are between line G and line H, they're on opposite sides of the transversal, so they are alternate, and they're alternate interior angles that are congruent. So, I'm going to use the alternate interior angles converse. So you can say converse, alternate interior angles. Or if you're writing as the parallel, it'd be alternate interior angles are congruent, then parallel. So, to reiterate, the reason why we chose the theorem in step 2 is that we were using the fact that line E was parallel to line F, and so we knew those corresponding angles were congruent using G as our transversal. We then, in step 3, ended up with a pair of angles that were congruent that we hadn't discussed which lines they were parallel, creating were parallel. And so since angle 2 and angle 3 would be alternate interior angles that are congruent for line G and line H, we can use the fact that they are congruent to prove that the lines are parallel, which is why we need the converse of the alternate interior angles theorem instead of the theorem. So I'm going to go through and do the next one. So this one's kind of the reverse of what we just did. We are given that line G is parallel to line H, and your copy should be fixed. You should have E and F here. I, for some reason, did not resave this PDF like I thought I had. Anyway, so, and if you don't have those, which you might not, because I just looked at my original key and it doesn't have those. Anyway, so E and F are the two that are not labeled. Doesn't really matter which one's which. And then we're told that G is parallel to H, and that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent. Again, I'm not going to mark that they're actually congruent, just because I know that that confuses people sometimes. And so I'm going to hold off on that. So since G is parallel to H, I'm going to highlight those, just to remember which lines are my parallel lines. And now I need to choose line E or line F as my transversal. And so I'm going to use the line that's on the left, my line E, because angle 1 and angle 2 are off of line E, and if I look at line F, there's only angle 3, and so that's not going to help me. So using angle 1 and angle 2, I can see that they are between the parallel lines G and H, and they're on opposite sides of line E, so they're alternate interior angles, and I know that alternate interior angles are congruent. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Oh, need to give in here. And since we know the lines are parallel, this is the theorem. Or you could say, if parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, now, if we look at these guys, we see that angle 2 is in both the given information and the statement we just made. So we get to say in step number 3 that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and that's by the transitive property. And so now I'm going to be focusing in on line E and line F, and then angle 1 and angle 3. I need to figure out what angle pair they are so I can then prove that line E is parallel to line F because they're a set of congruent angles. So angle 1, congruent to angle 3, they are both below line G and to the left of line E and line F. They are corresponding angles. So we have the converse of corresponding angles. Or if you're writing that, that would be corresponding angles are congruent, then parallel. I'm going to put that to the right just because that logically makes more sense. Okay. So again, we got which pair of these they were by step number 3. So we're looking at those angles. Okay. So the ones on the back, or the next page, page 12, have way more choice. So we're going to work our way through things one step at a time. We are given that line A is parallel to line B. Now, we have a lot more choice for our step number 2 here since there are all the angles in the diagram. And so we're still going to be using some sort of theorem if line A is parallel to line B. We now need to pick, do we really want to use angle 1 or angle 11? And which angle do we want to use to say that angle 1 is congruent to that angle or angle 11 is congruent to that angle? We need to repeat one of these two. It does not matter which one we use. So, using the blue parallel lines, I could be like, well, angle 1 would be congruent to angle 3 because they are corresponding angles. So I could use that as my step 2. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. I could also go, oh, angle 1's an exterior angle of line B and line A. It's not between them. And so I could use alternate exterior angles instead of corresponding, maybe. And so angle 1 and angle 8 would be alternate exterior angles, and so I could say those are congruent for step number 2. Now, we don't have to use angle 1. We could use angle 11 instead. And so angle 11 is interior of line A and line B. And so I could use its alternate interior angle. I wouldn't recommend using its same side interior angle. Or I could use its corresponding angle, which angle 11 and angle 9 would be corresponding angles. So, things I can't do. I cannot say in step number 1 that angle 1 is congruent to angle 9 by corresponding because line C and line D are not parallel. So I can't say that angle 1 and angle 9 are congruent because they're not using the blue lines. Similarly, I can't say that angle 11 and angle 3 are congruent because they're, again, not using the blue lines as my parallels. So, I'm going to do the third option I said. I'm going to use angle 14. So, I'm going to use D as the transversal right now, and I'm going to use angle 11 with angle 14. So, 11 and 14 are alternate interior angles that are congruent because the lines are parallel. So, I'm using the alternate interior angles theorem to say that those angles are congruent. Or saying, if parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Those mean the same thing, they just look a little different. Okay, so now I have that 11 and 11 are in both statement 1 and statement 2 in the given. So I get to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 14, and I get to say that because of the transitive property. So, I now look at angle 1 with angle 14. We know that they are congruent because of the transitive property. I now look at line C and line D to figure out what angle pair angle 1 and angle 14 are. They are outside of line C and line D and on opposite sides of transversal A, so they are alternate exterior angles that are congruent. So I'm going to use the converse of alternate exterior angles theorem, which says if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. I guess I can make that a little bit smaller so they would all fit. And so that allows us to say that C is parallel to D. Okay. To reiterate, we could have in step number 2, like it would change our reasons for 2, our statement in number 3, and our reason in number 4 possibly. But we could have also used angle 1 with angle 3 as statement 2, angle 1 with angle 8 as statement 2, or angle 11 with angle 9 as statement 2, and those would all have worked. So I'm going to do one final one. We're going to use angle 13 as congruent to angle 4. And we're told that C is parallel to D. So I want to think about candidates for what I would want to say 13 is congruent to or 4 is congruent to using C as parallel to D. So since 13 came first in the stuff, I'll start with that. So for 13, it is outside of line C and D, and it's on the left side of that transversal, line A, if I'm just focused on the left. And so I could say angle 13 is congruent to angle 5, because those are corresponding angles. And because the lines are parallel, corresponding angles are congruent. I could also do angle 13 and angle 2, because if the lines are parallel, then alternate exterior angles are congruent. Or, if I use angle 4, I could do angle 4 is congruent to angle 12 by corresponding angles, or I could do angle 4 is congruent to angle 15 by corresponding angles. But I cannot say that angle 4 is congruent to angle 2, or angle 4 is congruent to angle 5, because those would be using the fact that A would be parallel to B. But we don't know that, and so I can't say that 4 and 2 are congruent right now. They're not using the parallel lines that I highlighted. So this time, I think what I'm going to do is use the angle 13, because that came first, and I'm going to use angle 5, just because it's one of the options. So, for statement 2, I'm going to say that angle 5 is congruent to angle 13. It wouldn't matter if you said angle 13 is congruent to angle 5. Those are the same thing by the symmetric property. And so this is the corresponding angles theorem, or if parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. Okay. We see that angle 13 is in both of these statements. So in step number 3, I get to say angle 5 is congruent to angle 4 by the transitive property. And now, because I know that angle 5 is congruent to angle 4, I need to focus on which angle pair they would be for A and B. And so they are outside of line A and B. They are on opposite sides of line C, the transversal for that, for these two angles. And so these would be congruent alternate exterior angles, which would allow us to say that line A is parallel to line B by the converse of alternate exterior angles. Or you could say if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Okay, so there's my notes. Sorry you guys had to hear me cough. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. And if you made it this long, thanks so much for listening and paying attention. I hope you have a great day. I'll be adding feedback to your three proofs practice, just like I did with the 3-2 proofs practice. As a reminder, 3-2 proofs practice is due tonight. I highly recommend doing that 3-2, 3-3 extra practice review for Monday's check. On Monday's check, there will be 2 questions like the back questions on the first check that we took on Wednesday this week. And then it will then have a few proofs. I think there's 3 proofs. I think it's 3. It's 3 or 4. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. And I'm not going to look it up right now. Anyway,